How you going, guys? Josh from BBT here. Today I'm going to show you how to wire up our diesel engine. I do get asked this question a lot. I'm just going to take you step by step through on how to do it. Alright, let's get into it. Righto guys, first thing is to make sure you've got everything you need. So first thing is your bracket to mount your key switch, your wiring harness and key switch, you've got your battery leads, got 2 bolts here. It doesn't come with the kit, but I've got 2 bolts here to wire up the key switch. And that's about all you need. So you'll need a couple of tools to bolt it up. I think these are 13mm, 10mm for the battery leads, and that's about it. Righto, I'll show you how you do it. Righto guys, like I said, first things first is the key switch. A lot of people do have trouble finding the holes. So one thing to find it is you've got your tank here, go below the tank on this side, and you've got these 2 holes here. So those 2 holes are perfectly spaced apart for the key switch, and it will mount straight up like that. So the kit that we have doesn't actually come with the bolts. I do have some bolts here that fit it. You only need short ones. So these are probably 10mm long. They've got a 30mm head on them, and they hold the key switch. There's no pressure on the key switch, so you don't need big, massive, high tensile bolts. But yeah, they'll do the job. Another thing to remember with these engines is the key switch will not turn it off. The key switch is only to engage the starter motor and, turn the starter motor off when you flick it back. So to turn these engines on and off, there is a fuel switch on the front here. So up is off, and all the way down is fuel on. So that's what turns it on and off. So that's one thing to remember with these engines. The key switch is not designed like a standard key switch. It's designed just to engage the starter motor. So no worry guys, the first thing is, like I said, is mounting up this key switch. So we'll get my little bolts I have here and just mount it up. I do recommend doing this before you attach the key switch itself, because you will have troubles actually putting the bolts in with the key switch mounted onto the mount, and it's just easier to do it this way first. Alright, so we've got our 13mm, and we'll just nip them up. Like I said, you only need about 10mm bolts. That's because you don't want it to protrude too far into the engine. These are blind holes, so the holes do have backs in them. So if your bolts are too long, you'll hit the back of the casing. Just one. Right, so that's the key switch all mounted up. So next we're going to mount up our key switch mounts it up. Next we're going to mount our actual key switch. So with the key switch comes like this. You've got this little black knob that will undo. It's got some thread. And the next thing to remember, on your key switch you actually have this little divot on the end. See if I can show it. Yeah, so that little divot, that actually lines up with the mount on the key switch. So if I show you the key switch, you can see there's a little divot on the bottom of the key switch, so you're going to line those 2 things up. That will stop the key switch from turning while you're turning the key. So mount that up. You only need this hand tight, you don't need to go super tight because it's only a plastic thread. So the next thing guys is we're going to use our wiring harness, and we're going to do all that side of things. So the wiring harness is on the other side of the engine under the exhaust, and that's where our starter motor is located. So with our starter motor, there's 2 parts to it. You've got the actual motor here that throws out into the flywheel. Then you've got our solenoid here. So when we're wiring it up, we only deal with the solenoid. There's nothing really to do with the starter motor. So the first thing you need to do with your wiring harness, you've got 3 little prongs in your wiring harness. You've got the clip, little eyelet, then just like the push-in plug. So those do have 3 separate spots to go. This little plug runs the trickle charger, so when the engine's running, it's charging the battery. This one helps engage and disengage the starter motor, and this one does the same thing. So these 2 go on the solenoid, where this one goes into the charger. Right, so the first thing I like to do is just plug this one in, because it's nice and easy. So as you can see, it's located under here. You can't really stuff it up because there's only one plug to suit it. The next one will plug straight into the side of the solenoid here. So if you can see, there's a little clip there ready for it. Plugs in. Then the next thing is undoing the positive side of the solenoid, which with a 13mm again. and wiring up the little eyelet. So there'll be a washer and spring washer in there, don't lose those, you'll need them. So you put that eyelet on, and before you put the nut back on, I find it's easiest to put the positive wire for your battery on now, because that way it's not arcing from the battery while it's hooked up to the battery, and it's a lot safer to do it this way. So just pop that on. So it goes washer, spring washer, nut. Washer, spring washer, nut. Try that again. Like I said, I'm just doing that up there, guys. You don't need it overly tight because it is like a copper thread. So you don't want it to strip out. So you're just going to do it up tight enough until it's nice and firm. And if you do want your wires pointing a certain way, this is the time to do it because they're nice and easy to move. Once you do tighten it up all the way, you won't be able to move them around. So I like to face them inwards so it's nice and easy, even. We're just doing it up. Righto, so that's the actual wiring harness all done up. We've just got the other end to plug back into the plug. It's just a push and clip. You can only do it one way because there's a clip on one side. So we'll push that back into the plug we got already wired up. Mount it up. Righto, all good. So the next thing to worry about, guys, is you've got this big loose wiring harness. You don't need this much slack. And it comes with this much slack in case you want to mount the key switch in a separate place. So what I like to do, just fold it up like this. So you've got it like that. Then I chuck a cable tie just around it like that, and that holds it. So it's not got anywhere to go. It can sit on this hydraulic pump because there's no moving parts on the top. There is an open on it, but that's on the bottom. So it's not going to get damaged and it's out of the way. It's not hanging down. So that's the wiring harness all done. The key switch all done. The positive terminal for the battery all done. The next thing to look at is where we're going to mount our negative terminal and mounting up the positive and negative terminals of the battery. So let's have a look at that now. Okay guys, so we've got our battery. Our battery already has our battery terminals on it. Your battery may not come with them on it, which is perfectly fine. One thing to remember is the positive and negative terminal are separate sizes. The positive terminal is actually quite a bit thicker than the negative terminal, so you will need to actually make sure you get the right one on each. It should be indicated on each terminal, negative or positive. So you should be able to push them on, just tighten them up. It's a 10mm either side, so it's just tighten them up with a 10mm. This is where our Phillips head screwdriver comes into it. So wherever I put my Phillips head screwdriver, it's fallen behind the engine. That's alright, so we like to mount up the negative first, just in case anything happens. So the negative is the minus sign, not the plus sign. It's also the smaller terminal. So we're going to mount that up. It's just a Phillips head on top of that. We'll put it on. We'll do it up. So that's the negative all mounted to the battery. I like to do it to the battery first, just in case anything happens. With the other end of it, you can mount that up to when you're mounting the engine, so the bolt that goes through the engine, that mounts it to the frame or wherever you're mounting the engine onto. If you're not happy with that, I encourage you to just pull out one of the bolts that hold the engine casing on, or even the key switch bolt, and mount it up to that. That will earth straight onto the engine and it will create a good earth. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put it on the key switch, which is on the other side here. I know I've just bolted it up, so I'm going to undo the key switch, put the earth on there, and we'll do it that way. Just grab my ratchet spinner, it's a bit quicker. So your earth lead might not be long enough for this, depending on your setup. This is why I don't normally do it. I usually put it on the engine mount bolt for the actual where you mount the engine down, but as you can see, the engine's sitting on the bench, so we're not mounting down to anything, so I can't exactly mount it onto that one right now. So we're just going to put it in here and do it back up. Like I said, we don't need this overly tight, just nice and firm. So that's the negative all mounted up. Now we're going to do the positive. So as you remember, we've already done that positive onto our solenoid. So it's just a matter of hooking up to the battery. This should be your last step when mounting up the wiring for this engine, because this actually allows voltage to go to everything. And if you haven't got oil, diesel, or the earth done properly, you're just going to be dealing with power going somewhere where you don't need it yet. So this should be the last step. Righto, Phillips head screwdriver again. So the positive side, the one with the plus, and it's also that one that's a little bit bigger than the other. And that's it. So that's all this engine all mounted up. What we'll do, I'll chuck some oil in it. This particular engine takes about 1200ml. Chuck a bit of diesel in it and I'll start it up for you guys. Righto guys, I'm about to put some oil in it for you. So when you're always putting oil in engines, make sure they're sitting on a level surface. On our log splitters, you do have the jockey wheel at the front, so you can put the jockey wheel up and down to make sure the engine's sitting level. You've got your dipstick here, so that just undoes there. And then you just put oil straight into there. So with this particular engine, it takes about 1300ml or 1250 or so. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get my pump. I've got a 20 litre drum of oil. So I'll pump in about 1250ml. My engine oil takes about 50ml a pump. So I'll chuck that in there for you guys. So the easiest way to tell if there's enough oil in this is you'll see the oil just come up on the threads. So it should be touching on the oil. If the oil's running out, it means you've put too much in there, as long as it's sitting level. So the recommendation is just let it run out until it stops running out, then that'll sit level in the engine and the sump. So put our dipstick back in. Next thing is we're going to chuck some diesel in the tank. Always recommend using fresh diesel. Never use any old diesel you've had sitting around for a month or so, or a couple of months, or a couple of weeks, or anything like that. Yes, your tractor, your car may run it, but this isn't a tractor, this isn't a car, this is a 10 horsepower engine. Not as much engineering goes into these as you do a car that has cost you thousands of dollars. So what we're going to do, we're going to chuck a little bit of diesel in here and we're going to start it up for you guys.
I'm only going to put a little bit in, because I don't need to run this very long, sitting on the bench here.
I'm also not going to run it very long because I haven't got any fluid running through my hydraulic pump. Do not recommend running with no fluid. Don't do what I do. Do as I say, not as I do. So yeah. So when you're starting up these guys, always the thing recommended is there's a decompression switch on the top here. So what that does is push down the exhaust valve and allows the cylinder to freely go up and down. Always use this when starting, purely because it will help to save your starter motor, solenoid, battery, all those things. Righto guys, what you can do now is grab the keys and give her a start. So I've got my keys here, chuck them in. Like I said before, make sure you push the fuel down. That will allow the fuel go into the pump and from the pump to the injector. My decompressor's down. I'm going to hold that for a little bit while I pump it over, just to make sure the fuel is bled through the system correctly. So we'll just give it a go. Like I said, I wasn't going to run it very long, sitting on the bench here, no fluid running through the pump. As you can see, there's a bit of soot as well, so that happens with diesel engines. Diesel engines will soot when they first start up because of the excess fuel in the cylinder. Also when they're under load because it's pushing more fuel into the cylinder. No worries guys, thanks for watching. That was just how to wire up the diesel engine. Like I said, if you do have any problems with it, I'm always happy to take a call, so give us a call at BBT. Do like it if it's our own engine, because that way I know what I'm looking for. If it's not our engine, if it's a Yanmar or something along those lines, call the manufacturer where you got it from. Most of these 186 10 horsepower diesel engines are the same. I know the 188 11 horsepower is the same, the 178 the 6.5 horsepower is the same, and even the 170 the 5.5 horsepower, all very similar. This is a coupe diesel engine. We sell them here at BBT. I believe we've got the 10 horsepower priced at $699 currently. I can't quote that price because who knows when you're watching this video. But yeah, they come on our log splitters. We've got the 60 RPM pump on it. And as the same as our Honda engine that we have, it pushes a 65 ton. So this setup's rated for 65 ton, but the way we've got it set up with this pump will push 40 ton. So no worries guys, like I said, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to call us. I'm always happy to take a call. I may not be able to take it straight away, but the girls will always take your number down and I'll give you a call back when I can. Alright guys, have a good one.